Well, my name is Dede. I'm the managing director of O20. We are quite a new political party at UVA, a student party. And what makes us a bit different than any other political party is that besides just doing our regular council work, where we strive to implement change when it comes to sustainability, jobs, housing for students, we also organize quite some events. And one of these events is Project Major, and that is where you guys are attending today. And we think that the university could do a lot more in order to inform you as students into picking a specialization or major. Yes, the university does have a website where they tell you what courses you're going to do, and they say what points you can get for a certain course and what books you have to read. But we're missing some kind of real feedback or some real insights into the industry and into the daily life of being a student in that specialization. And that is exactly why we invited people like Maddie and Wolfgang to help us and to help you to pick the right specialization that really fits your persona and to make a better choice. Well, I want to start with Maddie. Maddie is gonna give a little presentation. She has prepared some slides. How long, if you can help me, Dana, is Maddie gonna take for that? Dana's gone.
I'd say about 15, 20 minutes, depends.
Yes. It was 20 minutes, and after that we will have a 10-minute question round wherein you as students are able to write in the chat your questions that you have to Maddie, and I will then pick the questions and ask them to Maddie. After that, we'll have a short break of 5 minutes, and after the break, we'll go on with Mr. Wolfgang, who we will interview and will also give a little presentation. And after which will take around 30 to 40 minutes, we will have a question round also of around 10 to 20 minutes, where you can ask him all your questions by unmuting yourself and asking the question in person, or by just typing your question in the chat where I can ask him the questions by myself. So we will be done by 7. So everyone can, after that, get back to following the US elections, as we all are, of course. But yeah, so let's start immediately, and I'll give the word to Maddie, who can start sharing your screen.
Sorry, Dede, my internet was bad, but you are correct. 15 to 20 minutes
Perfect.
is great. Yeah.
All right. Okay, can everybody hear me fine? All right. I want to thank O20 for inviting me to this great initiative. I was thinking back to when Anton and I were in our second year about this decision point, and it's actually, I think, the only real decision point in your bachelor, and it's one that really, it's really important, not only for your third year, but for everything after that. So thank you, O20. This is really cool to, as Dede already said, have different perspectives from me, from Wolfgang, so you guys can really make an informed decision. So I'm going to be discussing my personal experience for public policy and governance, also known as PPG. So I wish I could meet you all in person. I really don't like this whole Zoom setup, but it is what it is. So since I don't think maybe about 3 people in this call really know me, I'll introduce myself. Starting with academic/professional. So I grew up in Brussels. I went to the European School of Brussels, and as the name already kind of gives away, it's a school that allows children from parents who work for European institutions to go there. So that was a very international environment, so I knew I wanted to stay in that realm when I left high school. So I applied actually for international business, weirdly enough, in Maastricht, Amsterdam, and then I decided in the end to do management of international social challenges at Erasmus University Rotterdam. It wasn't for me. I passed. It was a great year, and I think I don't know if you guys have had that experience, but a lot of people, they start their bachelor and then realize that it's maybe too broad for them, or yeah, any other factor. So luckily I found political science, and now I'm here in my third year. I started my thesis studying political science. Next to that, I have a student job. I work for Adyen, which is a large fintech. I'm sure you guys have seen it on, if you order from Thuisbezorgd, from Uber Eats, if you have Spotify. Highly recommend if you guys are looking for a job. It's great. My interests next to that are Cineville, which is the cinema pass. Also highly recommend, especially during these times. It's about the only thing you can still do. That and hot yoga. So I have class pass. Yeah, I really enjoy it. Takes my mind off of everything. Traveling, it's pretty basic, but I really love it and miss it. And since I grew up in Belgium, I have a love for beer. My favorite is probably La Chouffe. So that's me. Yeah, again, I wish I could talk to all of you guys and know more about you, but that's not the case. So let's get into the boring stuff. My motivation for this course, and I think some of the things you need to think about if you have it yourself, I think you would fit very well in this course. I was quite sick of the theory, like the heavy theory of first and part of second year. I think one of the main reasons that people choose PPG and that I myself chose PPG is because it's way more practical. So you actually are expected to go out into the fields from the very start. COVID obviously makes this very hard, but you can still do desk research and you can still do some things within the limits. So you become a policy expert from Policy Lab 1. There's a lot of policy in the sentence. Policy labs, I'll go into more detail later. They're basically your tutorials. And you're kind of thrown into the deep end here, expected to, in non-COVID times, actually step outside of your doorstep and do research in society and then come back and write an assignment on that. So I think that's really, really cool, as opposed to just reading article after article after article. You have to be critical in the sense that it also says, I think in the course manual, you take a critical approach, meaning we look at a topic or a subject from different perspectives. So there's, I wouldn't say clashes, but there's always a lot of discussions during the tutorials, which might seem as a given, but trust me, it's not, especially on Zoom. There's a lot of awkward silences, and that has actually not been the case for me in my PPG tutorials, so that's really fun. Furthermore, you read a lot of policy documents, so that really doesn't sound exciting at all, but it's actually really great preparation for your thesis. I'm writing my thesis now, and I'm super glad that I already know how to kind of analyze a document and really know whether to look at the evaluation part or the research question. So that's great. Next to that, we have a bunch of guest lecturers, which I think always gives a nice, different perspective. So you can see where you could end up ultimately. They come from NGOs. I don't know if you guys have heard of Halo Trust, but it's a demining NGO, and I think it's based in Amsterdam, but they do really cool projects. I can send in the chat afterwards. We had a guest lecture from there that was super interesting, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and much more. So yeah, it really is the perfect combination of theory and practice. Yeah, I'm saying it's all practical. That's not true. There's also obviously theory, but it's a perfect combination. So you do have 3 required readings, meaning you should buy the books. I recommend it. I think you've already heard, because you guys already had the introduction to PPG, right? So you've all heard of Lipsky, street level bureaucracy. Maybe it wasn't so fun in the intro to PPG, but once you get more into the details, it's super interesting, and I'll talk a bit more about this reading after. You have Fung, empowered participation. It's kind of self-evident, and Pressman and Wildavsky, implementation. So for these books, you obviously don't have to read the whole book. You have a reading guide, and this really guides you and yeah, you know what to focus on. So it's really great. Okay, so this is a really dry part because I didn't know how else to do it. I can send you guys, I wrote down some notes on my phone. I'll send this in the chat after so you can have a really good look at it. So yeah, I'll just start. So I don't think the examination periods really are prone to change year to year. So we had our first exam after 8 weeks or 7 weeks, and the second exam the 17th week. So yeah, I'm going to divide it like that. So the material for the first exam, you basically look at the history of efforts to develop and implement public policy in public bureaucracies in the Netherlands and elsewhere. So some readings that the first bit is quite theoretical, but you need that theory to really build on and then go out into the field and really understand the theory in a wider scope. So you look at Rawls, who talks about the rational and the reasonable, Dewey, the public and its problems, Downs, which gives you an introduction to bureaucracies, which is a huge part of the first half of the core module. Yeah, you will hear bureaucracies too many times. So you delve into bureaucracies and scientific management. Then you look at Stone, which you all have heard of before too, I believe. So you look at the policy paradox and tools of regulation. Then you move on to one of the required books, Pressman and Wildavsky. And this book basically talks about how implementation can go very wrong and how to kind of avoid that. So I'd say starting off reading, I was very confused as to why we were reading this book. The language is quite difficult and I just didn't understand why we were reading it. But then if you really answer the questions of the reading guide, yeah, you're gonna pass your exam. It's really great. And then you go on to Lipsky with the street level bureaucrats. And then you do a bit of economics. You study the relationship between markets and policies. So that sounds like a lot, but, and it is. Honestly, the exams are quite heavy, but doable. Yeah, there's a lot of material. And if you have the same lecturer, Laws, the PowerPoints can look extremely long. He does about 80 slides. Don't be scared. He just repeats half of the things every lecture. So yeah, it's not as bad as it looks. Okay, moving on to the second part, which I personally found way more interesting. And I still use like every theory mentioned for my current courses. So that period looks at, you get knowledge on the insights and innovations that have been triggered by historical experience and challenges. So here, again, I think you've heard of Rittel and Weber, dilemmas in the general theory of planning. So you kind of look at all the challenges from what you've learned in the first period and work around that. So you get into collaborative experiments and a loss of the stable state, which is also a more philosophical debate, which I think is super cool. Then you study framing. Framing, same thing as bureaucracies, comes back time and time again. And I'm probably going to use something of in the framing realm for my thesis. So super interesting concepts. Then you get into the study of networks. Then you look at the relationship between framing and networks, looking at policy communities and international intervention. So a bit of IR there as well. Citizen participation, evidence-based policymaking, and democratic knowledge. So sorry, that was really dry. I'll send you guys the notes in the chat later because I don't know how to do that with my screen sharing. But yeah, those are the topics. Yeah, moving on to the assessment. So you have 2 exams. As I said, they count for 60%. You have to get 5.5 or higher. There are resits. Don't recommend it. It's not fun, but there are resits. The exams, as I said before, they're doable, but there's a lot of material. So I think that's where the policy observations come in very handy. So yeah, you get 3 policy observations. Policy observations are just papers. I can't remember the length. I think they're really not long, about 1,000 words each, if I remember correctly. But cool thing about these policy observations is what I said before. So you go out into the field, way harder in COVID times, but my first assignment was, it sounds really weird. We had to observe a tram conductor for 30 minutes and using Lipsky's street level bureaucrat theory, had to analyze them. And everybody was really confused because we didn't even know if it was legal to really like look at someone and write down what they were doing. And for some people that they noticed, but I think that's the cool thing about these observations, is that I'd say they're hard, but also super, super fun. And having this practical experience really helps to apply the theory in the exams. So I'd say, honestly, the papers are very easy to pass if you just take a bit of time. Now that it's COVID, so one of the assignments was supposed to be that we had to all go to a public meeting and look at how citizen participation is hindered by several people. We couldn't go to a public meeting because we were in lockdown, so we had to look at a public meeting on YouTube. Not the same, but yeah, doable. Yeah, so the labs are meant to familiarize yourself with this book. Okay, yeah, that's pretty self-evident. Learning by doing. Yeah. On to unexpected encounters. I think the only real thing, other than obviously having to observe a tram conductor, which I don't think anyone saw coming, was that you do have limited options for electives in the 3rd year. So I'll get to that after, but you don't have as many options as, for example, IR, just because I think there's less tutors, the scope is smaller. So that was unexpected, but it turned out really fine for me. So yeah, I think I can send you guys the PowerPoint after so you can have a look at this in peace. But yeah, so you have to do 1 6-credit elective and 1 12-credit elective together with your thesis. So that makes 30 credits for one of the semesters for your 3rd year. The other semester, you're pretty much free to choose whatever 30 credits you want. So as you can see, it looks like quite a lot of options when you look at it this way, but obviously you'll probably gear more towards really looking at which thesis topic you want to do, and then it kind of, yeah, whatever's left you'll take. Thesis-wise, you're pretty much free to do whatever you're interested in. Obviously, some are more geared for PPG students, so I'm doing emotions and beliefs in policymaking. That's still quite broad, so you get to choose, you get to narrow your topic down as much as you want. I don't know if I can, I can send you guys some examples of PPG thesis topics. But yeah, there's not much else to say about this. You can really choose whatever thesis you want. I'd say agenda setting in a comparative perspective is also quite PPG related. As for electives, personally, I took contemporary challenges in governance. It's such a long title. It was so great. One of the best courses I have taken so far. I think the best course I've taken so far. We had a guest lecturer every other tutorial, and yeah, we just talked about super interesting and relevant topics. And don't be scared by the title because they shouldn't have made it this long. It was really great. And I'm also doing corporate responsibility now. I just started. Yeah, it's a bit harder, a bit more economics, but I like that. So yeah, I'll send you guys this and you can look at it in peace after. So the skills that I learned during the specialization, this is kind of repeating myself, but oh well. You have to adapt to unforeseen circumstances. So whether this is a heated debate in class, because usually it is smaller scale, like in IR, there's a lot of students. In PPG, not so much at all, but maybe this year that'll change, I hope. So yeah, there might be heated debates. You have to be quick on your feet. And also just in general, what I said about the assignments that at first seem very weird, but then they make sense and they really help you get out of your comfort zone, which I think is a really good thing. Stand your ground and manage conflicting perspectives. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. Think critically, keeping yourself up to date, especially with the course I did, Contemporary Challenges. It's so interesting what's going on in the world now. Also very sad and frustrating, but definitely read different news outlets also from the Netherlands, so you can participate in those debates. And yeah, linking the most relevant theories to case studies. Almost all of your exam questions or assignments will be think of an example, and you'll have to think of an example, which may sound easy, but it's not always when you're under pressure. My final advice is don't worry about the intense material of the lectures. As I said, my lecturer really liked to make it extremely long, about 80 slides. Please go to all the policy labs, tutorials. This really helps, and even though it's obviously not interactive because it's on Zoom, it really, you get to know your colleagues, and yeah, it's a really good vibes. Be heard. So it's small scale teaching, so you most probably will be called out quite often. Again, I think that's really good for your personal development and confidence. I know I gained a lot of confidence, and maybe on Zoom you don't always feel like speaking out, but you should. It's good. And say no to overthinking. Don't overthink observing a tram conductor. Just do it and you'll see it'll all be fine. So my future. I definitely want to do a master. I don't know if I want to move right into a master after this, or if I want to take a gap year to do an internship if I find one. Yeah, Next Gen is basically also kind of a recommendation if you guys are planning ahead. So Adgen has a program called Next Gen, and what they do is they offer master students a job where you work, I think it's 3 days full time, so that's from 9 to 5, and then you have enough time for some masters at least to still study on the side. So that would be very nice. What kind of master? I definitely want to go gear towards international development studies, conflict studies, international crime studies. I think, except for international crime, they offer these at the UVA. After that, some field work. This can also be during your masters. They have what's called research masters, and you're meant to go out into the field and conduct your own research, collect your own data to be able to write your huge master thesis. And the dream, I mean, maybe European Commission, European Parliament, that's way too far ahead. Something to keep in mind though for myself. So yeah, that was it. Thank you so much for listening to me. Again, I'm sorry if this was dry. I wish it could be more interactive. And thank you, O20, for letting me do this. I'm gonna stop sharing and take any questions.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Maddie. It was very, very insightful. I think at least I did get a lot more information on the course, and well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to pick it anyway, so I might be a bit biased, but well, thank you for that. And I think I'll end up with the first question, and that would be not really for myself, but for the rest, since this is a course with a lot of international students. And do you think that as an international, you might experience public policy at the UVA different than as someone who speaks Dutch, since you do a lot of field work?
So your question is if you think it's different whether you're Dutch or international in the course?
Yes.
I'd say being Dutch is at your advantage because, for example, observing a tram conductor, they're probably going to talk a bit more in Dutch than in English. Little things like that. But I think, I mean, the fact that you're studying in Amsterdam, you have a bit of interest in the Netherlands at least. So yeah, I think it's beneficial if you're Dutch, but there's no real difference. If you can read a Dutch policy document, you can also translate this into wherever you're from. So yeah, guys,
Okay,
don't be
thank
shy.
you.
Ask whatever.
Then I'm going to go to the question from Antoon, and that is, what has been the best and worst part of your specialization?
Good question, Antoon. The best part, I have to say the course I just did. I was so pleasantly surprised by my tutor. I'll give him a shout out, Sander van Haperen. He was so great and so enthusiastic. Honestly, like, I mean, it's on Zoom. How enthusiastic can you be? But he was so great. And it made learning about current issues, like we discussed, a lot of Dutch parliamentary debates, systemic racism, a lot of controversial topics in a really safe and nice space. And he made it that way. So that was the best. Worst, having to look at a public meeting on YouTube for an hour instead of actually going to one. Definitely. That wasn't great.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. The next question is from Gabrielle Imperial. And can you give more examples about the practical work that you had to do during your specialization?
Oh, that's a good one. So yeah, I talked about the tram conductor. That was the first assignment. I can't think what the second one was, but it was also going out into the field. It sounds so vague, but we had to like go outside and do something. I think it was interviewing someone. I can't even remember. I mean, the third one was a public meeting. I was in my bed watching YouTube. The first one was, I can't remember now, but it was an interview. We had, so this is from third year. We had a guest lecturer from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands, and she's part of the gender mainstreaming departments. That's super interesting if you're interested in like using a gender lens in your papers. And we had the opportunity to actually go and interview her. So that was really cool. And there's a lot of little things like that. Second year seems like a really long time for me. So sorry, I can't give any more concrete examples. But yeah, guys, I'll send you my number after in the chat. So if you have any extra questions, you can also, do that.
Then the next question from Richard is how Netherlands focused is the content of the expected study material?
Yeah, okay. I can't give you a percent. Well, maybe I can give you a percentage. I'd say like 30% max.
Okay.
So
not, 1/3 of your course.
Yeah, well, maybe not even. Like, I would not be happy if it was very Netherlands focused, and I'm happy. So it's not too much. Don't worry about that.
Then I'm going to go to, let's say, from O20, which is Dana. I think it's a good question. Were your expectations for PPL or PPG met when you actually started the specialization? And I think adding on to that is public policy, the course we have in the first year. Is that a good representation of the work you do in the
maybe the beginning, but I remember, I mean, I didn't love the introduction to PPG at all, because you don't get into any detail. You just literally learn the theory. I forgot the theory the day after I did my exam, and you will not forget what you learn in the core module because you're constantly working on it practically and also theoretically. So my expectations, I think in the beginning you do start with more theory. So maybe I was a bit disappointed, but I'd say in week 3 already you really can see a difference. So yeah, definitely my expectations.
And then a question from Kat Caspers. Do you think the skills you learned are more transferable to the real world than the more theoretical specializations? It might be a hard question since you only do one, but yeah.
No, I definitely think, I mean, what I want to do in the topics that I'm interested in, I have touched upon all of them in the PPG, just like simple things like reading a policy document. Like I wouldn't really necessarily go deep into the evaluation part, but that's such a big topic right now. How do you evaluate a specific policy that has been implemented? So yeah, super transferable, definitely out of all specializations, I think.
Perfect. Okay, let's do 2 more questions very quick, and then we can go into the break. And maybe if Maddie is staying, we can end up during the break because there's quite some questions. We can answer the other ones. But let's see, a question from Flavio. Do you think PPG keeps the doors open for other study areas, or do you think it limits you in your future choices?
No, not at all. Obviously, I was really doubting between IR and PPG, but you really have a lot of elements. For example, what I said, oh wait, I'll send you guys my notes on the topics. But for example, you look at international intervention, and not from a PPG perspective or anything. It's very still open. So yeah, it's definitely keeps others. Like as I said, my future, I don't think I want to go do a PPG master. So yeah, it definitely gives you options.
Okay, and then from Danielle, Daniela, how much would you say the course focuses or relates to human rights?
I have to disappoint you there, I think. I mean, it's what you make of it. So theory-wise, not that much, not that I remember at least. But your papers are somewhat free, so you can always link it to that, I suppose, to some extent. Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think you should maybe check out IR because there's not that much human rights stuff.
Oh.
Honestly, honestly, the course again that I did this year, contemporary challenges, it's so cool. You can focus as much as you want on human rights, and the tutor will really guide you in that. But yeah, not that much.
Okay.
But well, maybe it changes.
Yeah.
Maybe it changes. I don't know how much it changes like per year, you know. So yeah.
Then we have another question from Henrik, and that is, could you give some examples of cases that you spoke about in class? I think that does relate to the first question actually that you answered.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of gave a lot of my assignments, right? Those are all.
Yeah.
Yeah.